So everyone that matters in the office has already played Bioshock Infinite. I was at GDC all week just hearing people complaining about how they had to be at this awesome conference and not playing the game. So I finally got home and had no problem forcing myself through it. And then I sat in my chair for like an hour trying to reflect on what happened. But then again, the whole thing was spoiled for me. Like there was an email, I wish I still had it. The email of the spoiler said, Booker/Prophet are the same person, period, Elizabeth kills him. I knew that the entire time in the back of my head, it was always there, but the delivery and the context and everything, I completely forgot.
Well, the thing is, I thought that, since I knew that same spoiler, I thought the whole time going through, like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal that I know that, because it seems like they're kind of being obvious with this, like, Booker and Comstock kind of look like the same guy, but older with the big beard. I mean, they kind of talk the same and stuff, like, oh, it's pretty obvious we're talking about the kid, no, Elizabeth's probably his kid, and like, but then I talked to Joe and Ben Hansen, and they were both like, oh, we didn't know until like the very end, basically. And so like I thought it was being a little overt because, again, I had it in my head the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like we were saying before, like, let's say you're watching The Usual Suspects. Like, when you go back and watch that a second time, the whole Kaiser Soze thing is like, oh, wow, yeah, okay, I get it.
Way to not use M. Night Shyamalan as a reference for a twist in a movie.
Yeah, let's go with it, yeah.
That guy sucks. Well, no, I mean, like really, I think The Usual Suspects is the better example, just because like it's not about the it's not only about the zinger at the end. It's also just about like the way it's built up.
But the way that you put it, I thought, was very well said. In that you said that, you know, none of the moments in Bioshock Infinite are that exciting in and of themselves. It's really more the presentation and the setup and the whole holistic butt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what I love holistic butts.
The thing that I really liked about it is that the whole thing is sort of predicated on one choice, and it's a choice that you don't even make.
Yeah.
Right? It's like none of the choices you make, like the bird or the cage, total red herring.
Yep.
Doesn't make any difference. Heads or tails, totally red herring. Doesn't make any difference. These are not, and I love it because it's sort of a commentary on video games, because like video games, you always get these like little minor choices that like affect your ending or whatever, and not always, but it's a common thing. And in Bioshock, it's like, no, look, choosing the bird or the cage, that doesn't matter.
But see, it can be interpreted that way. But what I think is cool about that too is it just gets you thinking about choice, because like it's really obviously the way that game sort of pans out at the end. You really need to think about, okay, in one place this happened, in another place this happened, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So then on this one's like, okay, in one universe, the cage, in another one, the bird. In one universe, Slate lives, in another one, Slate dies.
Or like the coffee tea thing, where they mentioned like in one universe, someone might be drinking coffee, someone might be drinking tea.
Right,
you always get to the same.
But what I to go to the choice thing specifically, is like by making players make those choices, you give them an immediate frame of reference of like, you did this thing and chose one or the other, and to sort of get you thinking about like all of the little choices that you're making and how that could branch off, you know, obviously in what happens at the end.
There was something that made me nervous about having a conversation that involved time travel and parallel universes, and that's, you know, this office, we just tried to talk about Looper the other day, or we tried to talk about Terminator 2. And if you try to go much deeper than like the core concept, like, oh, this has time travel and there are other dimensions, you can get too caught up in like the minutia of it. Is there something that's more crystal about this, or do you still think it's just as foggy as any other?
I mean, it's a complicated ending, obviously. Like, right after I beat it, I went into the break room with Joe, and, you know, we're getting paper out and we're drawing timelines. Like, oh, so, okay, battle wounded knee, and then this splits off this way, and this splits that, and then there's 14 splits here, and, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different things going on.
Part of it, though, too, is that, I mean, Bioshock Infinite, the infinite moniker is a reflection of the infinite number of universes in quantum theory, right? And so all the timelines that are presented or that impact on the story in the game, those aren't all the timelines. There are an infinite number of timelines where every choice is made, right? An infinite number of possibilities. And so everything kind of comes back to the end where Booker accepts being killed by the multiple Elizabeths, and then they start winking out as the timelines sort of reconverge, because, as Lutece put it, the universe doesn't like having its peas in its porridge. That whole thing is sort of cut off and cut out, and then the timeline gets restored to the real universe. It's not a matter of like causality so much, if that makes sense.
No,
the
it
way
doesn't
I interpreted that.
I mean, I don't think it's about a right timeline. I think it's about wiping Comstock from the timeline. It's not. I don't think it's ever a question of restoring what should happen or something. I think it's just, in this case, it's Elizabeth and the Luteces sort of working to bring Booker through and to like wipe out Comstock.
Before all that stuff, it's killing John Connor. Right?
Yeah. If you want,
Then I feel like, I don't think that Comstock was actually wiped out. After the credits, it just shows you, and it's clearly Booker's voice opening a door, and it just starts the cycle over again.
Is it necessarily the cycle starting all over again, or is there an idea of like if a Booker survived in one of the timelines, that maybe there's just one where he actually has a chance to like be happy with his daughter and not turn into a drunk that you know, like with no other Comstock to come and take her, maybe. You know, maybe he actually just gets to live with his daughter at that point.
Well, part of that, though, is that he had sort of screwed up his own life well before his daughter was born, though. Because he accrues this 20-year gambling debt that the Comstock and the other timeline is going to wipe away.
I don't remember. Is that stuff on the table in the post-credit sequence, though?
Oh,
The
the like
stuff?
gambler, like the horse betting tickets
like
and
all
stuff.
the
Oh, sure. So you're saying it might have split before that.
I don't know where. I guess we should real quick, since we're talking about all these infinite timelines and stuff. Sort of the quick summary of the way Bioshock Infinite ends. The spoiler is that in one universe. Oh God, this is already going to be complicated. This is already going to be ridiculous. The Booker DeWitt that you're playing in the game had a chance to get baptized and refused it. He then goes and accrues out all this debt. He has a daughter named Anna, and his life just turns into a wreck. However, in an alternate timeline, at that moment he accepts baptism, the timelines split off, and he emerges from the water with the new name Zachary Comstock. And what ends up happening is Booker, now Comstock, in Columbia, is told or sees through a portal the future in which his daughter leads Columbia to decimate the surface world, basically cleanse humanity in fire. So he, after being exposed to all of these crazy quantum experiment kind of things, is rendered sterile. With the Lutetia sort of reaching across universes and whatever, they basically cross the timelines over to Booker DeWitt and his daughter Anna, who is genetically Comstock's daughter.
Right, because he's trying to fulfill this prophecy that he saw, because he interprets what he sees through these tears in religious terms, right? So he always talks about the archangels whispering to him.
As Anna, who was later renamed Elizabeth, is being pulled through the portal, it closes on her pinky, which is severed, and she wears that little thimble. Now, this is important because it's in an audio log somewhere that they sort of actually explain that one of, like, Elizabeth, as a baby, Anna did not have all of these ridiculous powers, and had she stayed where she was, she wouldn't have developed all these powers. But the fact that her pinky was chopped off sort of means that she's existing, she's sort of an anomaly. She's existing in these, like the same person existing in two different places at once. Anyway, so she has all these powers to sort of like bend and see into these alternate realities. That is the short version. Jesus. No, of course there are all these other unanswered questions that we all have also.
So here's this crazy thing I read literally, 5 minutes before I came down here. I just emailed it to you. I don't know if you've seen it. It was a Forbes article that was like the one major twist you may not have noticed, and I had never heard anyone talk about this yet. And that's, I guess, in the original Bioshock, they say that Andrew Ryan's the only one that can, operate these bathyspheres and stuff, but you can do it as the player because you're his son or clone or whatever, so there's this genetic link. Somebody mentioned that you as Booker are able to operate it, so they're saying like, is Booker, like, this Forbes article is saying like, oh, Booker is Andrew Ryan or Booker is Jack.
It didn't have anything to do with the bathyspheres, though. That was the Vita chambers.
I read some of that too. There were some other inaccuracies in that because they were implying, like in that Forbes article, they were saying like, why was there no mention of Rapture? Like, shouldn't they have had like competing, a sense of rivalry or something? Well, Rapture was 1960s.
Yeah, it's like decades apart.
So there was a couple. There was some interesting insight in there, but I think there were some inaccuracies also.
Yeah. Also, there's no reason that Rapture has to be in the same timeline as Columbia even. That could be a totally different universe. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, it's not the same. Yeah, it's not the same time. Well, it is related. It doesn't have to coexist with Columbia, but it does coexist in the individual ocean that they're talking about at the end of Bioshock Infinite. Sure. It is some timeline that branches from the Comstock Booker split.
Here's one thing that I've kind of tried to talk to with Joe, and I don't think... Does anyone know what the hell is going on with that Lady Comstock ghost stuff? What the hell is going on there? It's my memories of you or what I thought you were. It's like I'm just watching Elizabeth talk to this ghost. I'm like, I have no idea what the f*** is going on right now.
So
like,
I think
absolutely no idea.
I think her power was used by the siphon in the tomb to bring across a version of Lady Comstock. But because she had such strong like emotions and feelings around it, that ended up reaching into and getting this weird version of Lady Comstock that was extra full of like hate and anger and undead zombie summoning power.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, it was a little bit of a stretch, I think, in order to create a boss fight that they wanted to make.
Yeah, which, by the way, was, I thought, the worst fight in that whole game.
Yeah.
I thought the end fight was way less fun.
On the boat thing or on
the end
ship?
fight, the end fight drove me crazy.
I mean, talk about dying on fights and retrying. In Infinite, when you die, you start back in Booker's office. And
Sometimes.
the implication there, I guess I've been talking a lot, but like, the implication when you die isn't that you are just resurrected. It is that basically that you are another Booker who has gone through the entire game up to that point and has done everything the same up to that point, except where you died. This Booker is doing a little better.
I wonder if there's not more significance to every time that Booker's nose bleeds.
Yeah, I thought it had to do with the fact that there was like memories from these other dimensions and that they bubble up in that. Because you see the dudes after dudes come back to life in another dimension,
right,
they're just dazed and their nose is bleeding because like they're trying to process the fact that they died but they're alive again and it's just breaking their minds.
Dying.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with sort of, I mean, like Tim was saying, the idea of memories that he shouldn't be having, sort of bubbling up.
Let's talk about. So we know there's several. Like, how many like core universes are there? There's the one.
There's an
the one where he
infinite
gets
number.
murdered. Well, I know in the grand scheme of things, there's an infinite number, but the ones you actually like play through. There's the first one, then there's one where he gets murdered, like he takes over the Vox Populi because Chen has his guns and everything and he can supply it to them. But then there's also this weird one at the end where it's like snow and he's like, oh, it's July, why is it snowing? And there's crazy George Washington kids everywhere. And that's another one, right?
But that's a far advanced timeline.
That's the
like
one in like the 80s.
1984.
What's the implication there that like all these, like they've just been messing around with this time stuff so much that like all these kids are crazy?
That's a universe in which Booker never rescued Elizabeth. And so she grew up and got indoctrinated and implanted with the control thing or whatever.
And those are the ones with the audio logs where, you know, people are telling her like, it's been 6 months, he's not coming back.
Right.
And she's just getting more and more like, and that's
unbalanced.
Yeah, and that's when she turns into a crazy old lady that blows up New York.
Yeah. All the Our Lady Elizabeth stuff where she's sort of carrying on.
That was my favorite part of the game.
I mean,
the crazy Comstock house, that was awesome.
So that's all in the 80s, right?
and you can presume then that is the future that Comstock saw.
Yes, that was the prophecy
That is the
getting
prophecy. That is the world of the prophecy that he was trying to fulfill.
The stuff that we haven't really touched on is all the like social commentary stuff that you expect out of Bioshock.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like they're pretty careful to not fall really on any side of a current political divide or anything like that.
It's pretty anti-racism and anti-crazy.
Okay, they're
stuff.
anti-racism. Irrational took a stand to say that
We
racism
don't like
is
racism.
bad.
I don't feel like they took a very measured approach with the religious angle of it either.
I mean, everyone's just like super bonkers, you know, like with the religious stuff.
That's like a cult,
right?
Yeah, it is. That's not a criticism.
Is it controversial to say like cults sometimes are bad? Cults with flying super cities are bad.
No.
Like, that didn't feel like any sort of like knock on like, you know, the like right-wing religion in America.
Yeah, it's not like a Tea Party, you know,
Right.
commentary. Yeah.
But I did really like.
Are they building a flying city?
We have problems.
We should look into this.
Just a shadow descends. Oh God.
Just giant red lights through the clouds.
I did really like just sort of the presentation of some of the really messed up stuff that happened in America around the turn of the century. Company towns, like the whole thing in Finktown, that is straight up company towns, and like union busting and the Pinkertons. Like these are things that happened in our history that we need to be aware of, that we need to not whitewash. And I appreciate the idea of somebody taking a video game like this and making it a pretty accessible friggin' video game that's about science fiction and time travel and blah blah blah, and like shooting dudes and really brutally murdering dudes.
Oh my God.
And actually having some stuff about the real history that I think that it's a good way. I salute them for presenting that to a broader audience, I guess.
I don't think it's making a stance of like it's not an anti-American game. It's just like, oh, some pretty crappy stuff happened throughout our history. So that's basically what
not shying away from racism, like the crazy racism of the time.
It's not like it presents one thing as bad and then the alternative as good. It's just more of I think the game in general is a lot more about just like perspective. So I was just curious, as all people who have finished the game, different moments are going to stand out. I want to go around and just get favorite moments from the playthrough.
One of the moments where it's just kind of starting to unravel, and this is right around when you're going to Chin, and like the first time you make a tear to an alternate Columbia or whatever. Like they'd already done some teases with like girls just want to have fun, just kind of the weird, carnival version of that. And like there have been hints that there's some weird stuff going on with music and stuff there, like, God only knows. And the one that weirded me out was it was around Chin's place or whatever, around the Fink area. And I walked in and I saw that red tear. And I walked up and it's just the studio recording of Fortunate Son by Creedence. I'm like, okay, something real weird's going on here. Because before,
that was the one that I really noticed too.
Yeah, before it was never the studio recording. It was just like, oh, they're singing this. Okay, that's weird, I guess. And then it's like, okay, that's a recording from the 70s. Like, what the hell is going on?
That portal comes into my universe.
Yeah. That moment, I was just like, okay, some just crazy stuff is going on here, and I just need to sprint through. Well, not sprint through, but I really want to unravel this. And again, real quick, talking about sprinting through stuff, that's like at the end with the fight on the boat. That's at a point where it's like, I just want answers. I just care about the narrative here. I don't want to sit and fight a bunch of a-holes on a ship. I want to learn more about the story. So, I think the action.
Okay, I'm going to take a branch off of that too, actually, before we get to other moments, because that final fight to me was the cherry on top of the disappointment sundae that was Songbird's implementation in that game. I paid a lot of attention to that game in the months and years leading up to its release, right? And like the whole concept of Songbird and the way that was positioned in like demos and stuff like that had me very excited to see how that whole thing played out. I was just really disappointed in the sort of minor implementation that creature had in the game. Right?
I thought it was going to be a giant, persistent Big Daddy type thing, and it just ended up being these scripted.
There's a handful of scripted moments where he comes in, and there's nothing you can do about whatever he's going to do, and then at the end he's just it reminded me a little bit of the Big Daddy segment in the original Bioshock, where it's like you're finally yeah, I'm a Big Daddy, and then it's just sort of oh, that's
Splicer's
it.
still kind of right.
Yeah, and the same thing is all right, I can control Songbird, and then you're just Get that blimp.
I didn't love the implementation of it in the fight. I didn't love that fight in general, although I liked the idea of having a separate win condition for the fight. I appreciated that. I didn't love the execution. I did actually really like the way they did Songbird, just for the sort of trope subversion of it, where you expect the whole game that this is going to be a big boss fight. Mm-hmm. You expect that it's going to be a big boss fight, and then having Songbird be sort of not necessarily a sympathetic character, but to have some sympathy to him, right? In Elizabeth, having some sort of well, he was my friend. I mean, yeah, he was my warden, and I grew to hate him, but he was my friend. And just having it not be a video game boss, I really appreciated that part of it.
I kind of viewed it as almost like a Jaws or Hannibal Lecter thing, where it's it's a super memorable character, but when you really just add it up, they have a few minutes of screen time. Everyone remembers.
Yeah, but I mean, take the example of Jaws though. So much of that movie is built up around the terror of Jaws.
It's also called Jaws.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so there's that. But no, I mean, but you know what I mean is that the shark and the fear surrounding the shark is one of the driving forces for the movie. In this, I don't feel like fear of Songbird is any, the Songbird is just not present in the narrative until it shows up.
I agree. I don't think
flies away.
I guess I didn't have any expectations really around Songbird necessarily, and what role he was going to play. And so it didn't really bother me that it was done in this sort of different way.
Where it really stuck out to me is that death scene, which I really liked, but felt that it would have been a much more powerful scene if Elizabeth hadn't just once said, Songbird is the only friend I've had for 18 years. I love him, but I hate him. The end, and then all of a sudden he's drowning.
Yeah, they should have gone with that voiesoover for that.
That was not a good example. Anyway, so that's my rant about Songbird. Favorite moments.
Well, I actually have two, so I'm going to cheat because I don't care.
No, go for it.
I know we have a lot of really stringent, rigid rules about how we record Spoiled. The first was when Elizabeth wrenches you in the face. That made me so happy. That was so great because it was it was another moment where I was okay, well, let's see, oh, she's gonna like be mad at Booker, whatever, but we're gonna go do our Booker thing and bring back the girl to repay the debt or wipe away the debt. And then she just turns around and just wrenches you right in the face. And then the going into Crazy Comstock House, which I mentioned was my favorite part of the game. Going in there, seeing the weird like speaker head dude. Yes. And like the first, like you go up and you're like, okay, do I just need to like punch him in the face? So I like go up and I like melee him. and then he just turns around and goes, brrr, and like everything went to hell. And like the dudes who were like kind of flickering in the like weird kind of terror mode, all kind of like and like came after you. Like,
Well, it's so great that in a game that doesn't have jump scares or anything, and just typically isn't really a scary game at all. I mean, there's some creepy atmospheric stuff or whatever. When you're just like watching that screen in the Comstock house, it's like, all right, well, I guess I'll turn around and do that thing, and it's right in your face.
Yeah.
And oh my god, like I remember just pausing the game immediately and being like, "F you," like that. No, don't do that to me. Like that's, I was talking to Ben Hansen, and he says he, screamed the F word as loud as he's ever screamed in his life, and.
Yeah, that surprised the hell out of me.
Yeah,
I really appreciated that.
It gets you really good.
Because that thing's weird looking.
Yeah, I love Joe. Explain your reaction.
Yeah, my reaction to that was I had a machine gun out at the time, so I turned around and saw him and was like, bah!
it totally did that.
I just machine gun sprayed everything nearby.
Because he's already gone by then, isn't he?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Does he just disappear? I don't even remember.
I think they just peace out as soon as you activate
And then crazy Washington kids come in. Yeah.
All right.
This game's weird.
I think my favorite moment was like the first kill, because the whole thing is just sepia toned and calm, and it's cool because when you saw Rapture in the first Bioshock, you just only saw the aftermath, and here you got like this pretty generous introduction to like the idealistic life of Columbia, and then it's just like, oh no, I'm just gonna tear this guy's face off with this skyhook thing, and it's just terrible, and like everything's just like white, all the white stuff's just spattered with blood, and it's just gory, and like half his face is gone, and then suddenly you're shooting guys, and it's just like ribbons of blood, and like the contrast I thought was just awesome.
Well, and for those first few kills too, you only have the skyhook,
Yeah.
so you're just like
it's all super
you're like
brutal,
putting it in someone's neck
you're
and
right
breaking
there.
their neck with it,
and then of course just like the Rapture cameo thing. Like I'm a sucker for that. So.
On the violence tip, I really like that the first time you get into combat with Elizabeth, she has that like, oh my god, you just murdered the hell out of those dudes. What is wrong with you? And like, I appreciate the nod to like, you are just going around murdering the hell out of a lot of dudes in these games.
Yeah, it helps that they acknowledge it. She gets over it really quick.
She does. But did I want to sit there for another half hour and talk about how it was the moral implications of murdering
but even
a
just a
whole lot
nod
of dudes
to
with
it.
fireballs?
Yeah, because
I really didn't.
Tomb Raider did the same thing, and like
just
that
the
nod is
acknowledgement. Yeah. There were lots of moments that I really liked, but I think my favorite one is actually the sort of quiet moment in the basement of that bar when there's just the guitar sitting there and you just sort of like you're not even quite sure what you're gonna do with it. It's just like guitar,
Just be like, bang, just like the string noise.
Yeah. So I walk up to the guitar and like suddenly Booker just picks it up and starts strumming along, and Elizabeth, as she's like poking around, starts singing along, and it's just one of those cool. I guess it was fun because amid all the violence and all that stuff, it was just this cool little quiet character building moment between the two of them where she sings the Will the Circle Be Unbroken song.
She hands the orange to that kid under the stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
I super missed that.
This quiet moment.
Oh,
you didn't?
Yeah. So the end credits thing when they're talking about recording it with like Levine and stuff, like
really cool.
I'm gonna probably YouTube it. So
Yeah, and thinking about that too, it is interesting given the whole 120 some Booker is doing this time and time again, that the song that appears at the ending and then again in the credits and in the middle is that Will the Circle Be Unbroken song. Sort of a nice little tie in there too, I thought.
Really, really cool.
Yeah. No, I had a great time with it.
a lot to talk about. Yeah, that was a good game. Let's play it again and then reconvene.
Okay.
I don't know. You'll have to work pretty hard to convince me to play that again.
You won't.
Speaking of loving George Washington kids, which God, I love that part.
They're
It's
great.
so
They're the
good.
best. That's the one where he wanted to stop playing the game because he was so scared.
Well, they got during the entire
No, I mean, they weren't kids.
Well, whatever they were. He didn't want to walk through the hallway with all the heads.